And it's live. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Zach. My little profile thing saying I'm the wannabe intellectual. So, I'm a wannabe. I want to learn a bunch of stuff. So I'm here having a good conversation about, some political ideology stuff.
And I just want to have a live stream about libertarianism and how this can be how we can make it more known and popular.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you want to lay out, kind of your fundamentals on this?
Thing is about the thing is libertarianism. Libertarians in general tend to be really ideologues. Like they tend to hold their positions hopefully, but I think that's a fatal conceit because I think they need to start thinking pragmatically because they're not gonna, and the same goes with the ANCAPs as well because the non-aggression principle. This is wrong to initiate force, but I think the libertarian movement should be start using more popular methods to get more known.
Gotcha. So you would say you'd want libertarians to promote more ideas that would be, more skewed to a voting base to start bringing people to, you know, um, some sort of understanding with libertarianism. So maybe stray away from the core principles, or are you just saying that libertarianism in and itself should just be reshaped to
I
some
think
extent?
what I'm arguing for is that that libertarian that we're not gonna go anywhere with the libertarian party, but we need to keep the saying goes with the voters that we just need to keep we can promote our ideas, but we just need to start using more populist methods
Gotcha.
to
So
be
better uses of persuasion, right? We're
yeah
looking to weigh some audiences here rather than, being a complete, because I guess you would say, most libertarians would be idealists, right? And maybe that doesn't quite, reach the voting populace.
yeah like say like Donald Trump. A lot of people voted for him because he was promoting that this like the government is dumb. I'm smart. I can run the government much better than anyone else. Just like he like that's the thing. He just thought the government was being stupid. He never ran on the government needed to be smaller, but you just need a smarter government.
Gotcha. Yeah. Need a business guy in there or whatever,
Yeah,
his big thing was the establishment, right? So the corrupt, out of touch establishment. And would you
yeah.
say that that would be a good tactic for libertarians, or would you think they would want to employ something else?
Mm. I think it'd be a good tactic, like getting more in touch what's going on in the voters and in average American minds. The same goes with Bernie Sanders saying that we must tax the 1%. We must tax the 1%.
Yeah, yeah. We need free college and healthcare. Like all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Well, we're not going to promise any free stuff naturally, but
yeah. Oh, obviously, right. Well, I
okay.
mean, anything other than freedom, right? Get some
Yeah.
freedom, but that's pretty interesting. So basically, what you want to do is you want to tap in to the values of the voting base a little bit more than just spewing the raw philosophy. You want it more targeted, right?
Yes, like unfortunately, we kind of live in a more culturally saying that profits are bad, well, thanks to Marxist bullcrap. But
Yeah.
we like people don't trust the free market anymore. Thing is, they don't trust their own people anymore. It's honestly misanthropic to be honest.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's not only that they mistrust the market, but it's also that, you get corrupt people at the top. And with the increasing power of government, you allow those corrupt, individuals at the top to stay in power so they get bailed out, or, they're able to they're actually able to, have their lobbyists lobby for more regulation to stifle competition. And, that's when you're not even getting a perfect, uh, I quote unquote perfect capitalist system. You're not getting perfect competition. You're
yeah,
getting, monopolization. And that's just, and again, that's where people would distrust the market, because it's like, wow, there's this huge monopoly of power here. And as the government grows, so does the power of that corporation. But
yeah.
if
I
the
think
government didn't have the power to stifle the competition of that corporation, you would see, at least a much better market and, on paper, right?
yeah, but I think people naturally trust something more, a more authoritarian, something like the state or our devil, the libertarian worst nightmare, the government. But the thing is, people are been raised to trust the government, partially because the government sort of monopolized like many
Education.
public public utilities such as the roads, and also the increasing amount of taxation. People have been propagandized. Think taxation is a good thing, sort of. Um,
Yeah,
also, the
yeah, it's
schools. They
almost.
also the control of the schools as well, so they can spread
Oh yeah.
their misrepresented history. But when you take a more objective look in history, or history that hasn't been edited out, you realize these problems are caused by people in power.
Yeah, and you could even say, with teachers being part of, unions or having a liberal stance, I know there's a lot of, individuals within the conservative movement that complain that textbooks are too slanted on the liberal side rather than, more conservative or libertarian slant. And, that could be true. I mean, in certain cases, but I'm sure it's case by case basis. But I
Yeah,
would agree that, there is a certain precedent set where it's like, there's welfare programs, and those welfare programs help the poor. So in turn, the government actually cares about the people. The government's giving you a free education. Without it, you'd be nowhere. Without the welfare, your family would be nowhere. The government protects you. Obviously there's certain aspects where there's getting upheaval. So like with the police force, people aren't trusting the government as much. But then when it comes to other things like welfare programs or even healthcare, I mean, how can you not trust the government to defend you like the police, and then trust them to be your doctor?
that's
But
yeah. I think that's the thing. People been sort of like raised that the government is some type of like some type of like they provide so many services. The thing is like when you take a look at these programs such as the war on poverty, these programs were specifically to designed to impoverish and keep people uh, entrapped in these welfare schemes and
oh yeah, most
social
definitely. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different perspectives on the war on drugs, but I know for sure that it's just a perpetual cycle. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I mean, that's one of the strangest things to me, and I think that's. I mean, it's really just because people are complicit, right? Because we're cozy enough within our first world country that we're not mad enough to everybody riot in the streets to change these things, because in the end, the war on drugs only affects so many people, right? So I mean, we have these armchair protesters and armchair activists. I mean, I'd even say I'm one of them, right? Like, I don't like the war on drugs, but what am I doing about it? And I think that's part of the problem. Obviously, I'm not saying riot, right? But I mean, it's more of there needs to be a better discussion about this, because I think most people, okay, I wouldn't say most people agree that the war on drugs is bad, because I'm sure there's a lot of conservatives that and liberals that might think it's okay, but I'd say more on the conservative side because they're more anti-drugs than I'd say liberals are. But I think, oh man, like, what do you think it's going to take in society to change for people to, not be so complicit with, these obviously awful programs or obviously awful like systems?
like it's really more so it's more so at the root of the culture if anything else. Like
Gotcha.
when you have like a saturated culture such as Hollywood promoting these socialist or Marxist themes, such as class struggle or whatever, or we need to distrust the dangerous rich people that will somehow exploit the poor. It's really more so at the culture if anything else.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I remember Plato talking about how he would want, ideal celebrities to be within a society. So he would want ones that are moral. He would want politicians to be philosophers. He'd want, celebrities to be philosophers, because he would want them to set the ideal for the society. Because celebrities do kind of set some amount of ideal, right? Because people look up to them, and especially when they're young, they want to be them. They want to, they're inspired by them essentially, especially by films too. I feel like personally, obviously, I have no like actual scientific data. It's all anecdote for me at least, and I know at least for a lot of people that I know, that movies and even different forms of entertainment like video games and such things, they really do shape young people's worldviews and how they see it. I think even adults. I mean, like you just said, we have the whole scheme of, the rich bad guy, and then the knight in shining armor that's impoverished or whatever, and he fights, the establishment that is the rich, corporations, and that really sets people's worldview because, I mean, it's just because they're, again, like you said, they're soaked in it, right?
Yeah, this is like I know you're not familiar with Hans Hoppe, but this is why Hoppe has sort of fractured the already fractured libertarian movement. When you start saying it's more so a cultural problem, this is why he's sort of pro immigration control, because he is aware that these immigrants, these are going to take advantage of these welfare programs and most likely going to vote for bigger government.
Yeah, and we do know that immigrants coming, at least first generation immigrants, do take a a large proportion, are take a lot more welfare than you know uh, you know the populace that's our the native population, quote unquote native population, right? Um, and I think it is. We also have the numbers that they do vote primarily more for bigger government, and that definitely is. I think one of the biggest issues within America could even be that it's so rich and so many multitudes of culture. What do you think about that?
What I think about that is just yeah, yeah, America is definitely multicultural, but people have different values all over the country. The thing is, like, let's say a liberal place like California, they're definitely going to vote for more, like, let's say, more bigger state government because it's really progressive and compared to a more conservative state like Texas. It's really a culture thing because I think the Texas government is definitely smaller compared to other state governments.
Yeah, especially with the certain rights that they allow in the state, right? They have much more loose gun restriction in California for sure.
Yeah, just this is why I think like people advocate for a popular vote system, and I think they don't realize that America is really a big place with people who have different values. I honestly think that people really don't know what they advocating for is actually something more so of a greater injustice to everybody else.
Yeah, and that's just a large lack of critical thinking, right? It's just a lack of education within certain fields, right? It's kind of a misunderstanding of even slightly basic economics and basic ethical standards, right? Or even just critical thinking in general. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's the problem when you have a culture promoting democracy as a wonderful, great thing. Well, though partially because all neoliberal democracy are rich, well, mostly because they have some form of a free market. But
yeah,
when you talk people like Plato and realize that democracy is really more so of a regression, or at least a pure democracy is. That's sort of a problem. Most people believe that democracy and freedom are synonymous, but they're more opposed to one another when you really
law
take it
meant.
on the fundamental level.
Yeah, because you get the mob rule, right? Yeah, I do remember Plato talking a lot about how he wasn't a huge fan of the Athens creation of democracy, at least within its current state that they had, right? He wanted people to be educated before they actually voted. He wanted them to actually be philosophers before they voted, have critical thinking and have ethical standards before they just vote for just someone who's going to give them free stuff, right? I mean, that's like
Yeah,
the main
this is why
problem.
the founding fathers wanted more so of aristocracy, if anything else.
Hmm.
Like they
So
wanted
if you were
just
to have a Yeah. If you were to have a small, so are you an advocate for smaller government, or would you rather there just be an anarchist like community, rather, or society, rather?
like the thing is like since we do live in the real world, I do advocate for a smaller government than the ultimate goal to reach to a voluntary anarchist society. That's what I advocate for.
Gotcha.
I just think libertarians should just use more populist, more right wing methods to spread their message and spread their agenda.
Gotcha. And just I'm curious, if you were to have your smaller government, what would the role of government be for you?
The role of government, if we're gonna have a government, it should be like a nightman, like a watchman of sorts, to make sure there's any no abuses, maintain and respect people property rights, and some and promote free market capitalism, encourage people to solve their own problems from themselves, and then looking for the government.
Yeah, and I think that ties in really nice to, kind of what we were alluding to before is just, a system based on where people become dependent on the government. I think of something like Social Security, and I was seeing numbers in that, once Social Security was implemented, American savings rates went down. People weren't saving money anymore because they didn't need to do it, right? They don't need to save money because there was Social Security, the boomers, right?
Yeah,
That well, generation before the boomers, because there was such a large population boom that they knew there was going to be enough tax revenue to pay for these older people once they retire. And then now the population rate has slowed down, and now the boomers are retiring, and we don't have that same huge swath of population to pay taxes into that. But again, it's just that state dependence. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I remember seeing some numbers. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a ghastly low amount of Americans actually have any savings. I want to say it was like 27% of Americans have like any actual savings, but it might have been a little bit higher than that. But it's crazy that people just don't understand that,
yeah,
and that's
just
because it's dependent on the government, right?
it's more so due to the lack of education, such learning the history of the America. I think it's really more so due to a misinterpretation of American history, if anything else.
Mm,
Like,
okay,
let's say, like an American Revolution. Like people just realize it really was a capitalist revolution based on individual rights, respect the property right, the fighting
exactly.
the, the fighting the British king over 3,000 miles away. This I think we just sort of lost that value that made America so great in the first place.
Mm, it's understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know I was having a conversation with some of my, friends, and I was talking about, man, if I were to make some sort of requirements for education, I would definitely make at least, within like high school, right? I would say there should be like a mandatory finance class, and then I would say even, obviously, I'm not a huge fan of making things mandatory in general, but if I had, if there was a way in which I could sculpt it, I would definitely want a mandatory finance class that was, effective, right? I'd want, more interesting teaching methods that actually, promote people's, them actually comprehending the content of the class, right? And then I'd also say some sort of ethics class, because I think that's what people lack so much. Is that I think, again, we have so many people with different cultures, but I think it's also that they just lack, consistent principles. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Just yeah, it's really, yeah, like I said before, it's really a cultural problem, and and a slow decline of the more so as a whole as a West identity that made Western society unique unique compared to other societies before it. But it's more so a loss of a cultural identity, and more so of the lost understanding of property rights.
it's a loss of understanding that at the end the individual is responsible for the individual rather than the collective being responsible for the individual.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry about that. What you're gonna say?
Oh, no problem. No, I think. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I think I was just talking about. What were we talking about? We're talking about principles, and then we were talking about. I don't know. Let's jump to something.
I
I
think
totally
I
went.
think I brought up like the soul decline.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. We were talking about how Western civilization was built on the individual being responsible for the individual, and now it's kind of shifting to maybe the collective responsible for the individual. Is that what we were kind of getting to?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that's a problem for sure. I
Yeah,
think it just leads to people, um, not quite. And it is somewhat, created by specialization within. Because I was reading a little bit up on Marx's critiques of capitalism, and I know one of his big critiques was that specialization. And I think even Adam Smith talked about how it's important for um, business owners or even just managers in general to instill in their workers that they do a value because of a specialization. Instead of being like a small unit creating a good, now you're just a cog in a machine. So do we think maybe that might have, with our over industrialization, you think that might be a cause, and maybe we should change, kind of the way that we treat workers or anything like that? Or do you think it's some
yeah.
other underlying issue?
I think the more underlying issue is that it's just the public education is just pushing kids to go to colleges that they probably don't need to go to colleges like
Gotcha.
just it really it's like we don't really have any like low skill jobs anymore. It increasingly become more specialized and definitely it's more harming to low skill workers.
Mm, that's understandable. Yeah, with automation coming in, right? New innovations in automation, that could be somewhat of a problem unless there's some sort of market solution for some basic jobs, right? I mean, within the next couple decades, we could see a lot of jobs fall by the wayside because machines, do it better.
And there's still always going to be a need for low skilled labor.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It just is going it's just going to be more difficult um due to the misunderstanding of the minimum wage and regulations. That's probably going to
Oh
be
yeah, for
the
sure.
death of low skilled labor.
Oh yeah, I mean,
At least in this country.
yeah, California trying to get to $15 an hour. They're creeping it up slowly, but they're gonna get there. It's like, oh man,
And
that's crazy.
I bet the unions are going to exempt themselves.
Oh jeez, man, that's. I mean, I feel like it's basic economics why that's a bad idea, but you know,
Yeah.
who knows? But I do think the university thing is also somewhat of an issue too, because you get people making this. I see university as somewhat. It's just an investment, right? You're putting money, unless, of course, you're kind of. I mean, even if you're getting all your tuition paid for by grants or scholarships or whatever, you're still investing a lot of time into some field or some realm of study. And if it's a study that you have never really fleshed, I mean, obviously, college is a good place for you to find what you want to do and what brings fulfillment. You know, but a lot of people, I do, at least in my experience, being here at a university, plenty of people are here and don't really understand why they're here in the first place. Even if they have a declared major or not, they don't really understand that they're here, to actually grow intellectually rather than just this being, you know, just what you do when you're 18. Because that's definitely an issue.
Or a safe space.
Oh yeah, oh most definitely, yeah. Oh man, I
What
mean,
your
I've seen plenty.
college like actually?
It's I haven't had too many problems. I know we had the whole hat gate scandal here, um, where that one lady stole the guy's Trump hat or whatever, and then I don't know, it was like on Fox News and stuff like that. But it hasn't been nothing too crazy. It is very well, okay. There was one strange thing. I know it was a little speech for incoming freshmen, and they were doing oh, you're here at this college and you're going to do great things. And then they had this ethics professor come up, and then he gave a whole speech about how our life goal should be to end white supremacy. And I was like, what? What?
Ooh, oh man.
No,
Oh
he.
wait.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
man.
was like, he said, you all need to know that you need to fight white supremacy around the corner, down the street, and in Washington D.C. And then everybody cheered, and I was like, what the hell?
Ooh,
Crazy.
that sounds kind of Disturbing, actually, very
And he
disturbing.
he literally said the words, "Your life mission should be to end white supremacy." And I was like, I mean, obviously, right, white supremacy is bad, but he's trying to say that, you know, it's a huge problem at the moment and that it's everywhere. And it's like that's not true.
Like, is he
At
talking
least in
about the
my
alt
perspective.
right? That movement is more
I
so
think
localized.
yeah, I mean it's very local. It's very small, right? I mean, but I don't know. I bet if I talk to him, I bet if I talk to the professor, he would say it's systemic white supremacy and that you know Donald Trump and all the Republicans are white supremacists. You know, who knows? I would love to actually have a conversation with that professor and see actually what he believes. But because I'm sure I'd be surprised. I
Yeah,
like to give him the benefit of the doubt, but
sound like other Marxist leftist pseudo intellectual.
yeah, I mean, it was it's strange, but I don't know. I mean, I have a particular problem with race being a large part of people's identity in general, but I mean, people can choose to do what they want. But I feel like it's one of those, it's a more primitive thing to me. But again, I'm white, so well, I don't like to call myself white, but I am.
Oh, are you feeling that white guilt coming on?
Yeah, I'm feeling the white guilt. I'm like, oh man. I remember I was telling some of my friends from my high school, I was like, man, they did this crazy speech about white supremacy at my little introductory speech. And one of my friends is like, well, white privilege is real. And I was like, and I would tend to disagree with that, but obviously, I'm open to any sort of evidence that there is. But my main argument was if I spoke to that professor and I said, do you think I benefited from white privilege? What actual empirical evidence does he have to suggest that I have? How does he know? You know what I mean? How does he know? He knows nothing about me. And he's just making an assumption purely because of the color of my skin. And I mean, I'd attest to anybody making any sort of assumption uh, about anybody's skin in general. But
Yeah,
that's just me, I
just
guess.
like when someone say like you have white privilege, you probably should ask that's really racist of you.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is that if they're talking about economic advantage, Asians way outperform whites in America in almost every economic stage. So it's like, is there Asian privilege? Asians. I mean, I've heard Ben Shapiro talk about it a lot, and I've read a couple studies about it, and it's just they face less crime, they're wealthier, they're more educated. So it's like, is there Asian privilege now too? But they would never say that because America wasn't founded by Asians, I guess.
They're founded
It
by
was
a bunch
founded
of
by
rich
racists.
old right men.
Yeah, but it is what it is. I do find it sad when people do um, make race such a large part of their identity because I feel like it's very arbitrary. Obviously, there are certain like physical. Some races are more susceptible to certain diseases, and within a scientific stance, that can be important. But within the realm of ideas, I feel like it just doesn't matter. But I think that again could be a preconceived bias just because of the climate. You know, right now it's hyper about race, and I'm such a contrarian when it comes to a lot of things that I feel like maybe I disregard that too quickly. But how do you feel about that? Race in general.
Race is just more so of a it's more of an identity collectivist kind of thing. Like, you're white, you must vote for conservatives. You're black, you must vote for Democrat. It's really disheartening because it really sort of destroyed the individual in you.
Yeah, because I would feel that someone should build their individualism on ideas that they hold dear and the principles that they've learned, right? And then they explore that space rather, try not to make your identity so, I guess you would say, dogmatic or so rigid, right? So it's just, well, my identity is that I'm a black liberal, and you're not going to change that. And it's like, wow, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it just should be people need to be a little bit more skeptical about, use a little bit more introspection, right? Because like you said, I think you had made a video before. I was just kind of skimming through some stuff on YouTube, and I was looking at your video where you were complaining that ANCAPs and communists just kept kind of straw manning each other and just like they're not really trying to look for solutions. They're just kind of being ideologues or whatever. And like you said before, a lot of libertarians are being ideologues, and it's like I think a lot of them would benefit from being a little bit more skeptical, a little bit more Cartesian about their ideals.
Yeah. Just well, it was more so it's more so a complaint about the Marxists.
Yeah,
Like I think they don't understand where libertarians come from.
gotcha. Yeah, because they complain that you haven't read Marx, but how much of libertarian literature have they actually read?
Actually, we got well, at least for us, we got actually multiple authors and
Yeah,
many people.
yeah,
So just one guy and then some some sugar daddy.
yeah, yeah, daddy, yeah. That's pretty. He was sending poems to his sugar daddy. I remember that. Learned about that. But oh man, I don't know, man. I mean, I'd love to kind of. I just love for to be able to have some civil conversations with a lot of these people because I feel like I'm sure there's a lot that I don't understand about what they actually believe, right? Maybe that's wrong. Maybe a lot of the progressives here at least are exactly the stereotype that I would think they are. But I would love to just kind of sit down with some gender studies major and be like, why did you choose this? Why are you doing this? Rather than being so. I mean, the same thing with like a Marxist. I would really like to kind of dissect why they think what they think, right? I mean, I know I had some people in high school that I knew, and one was a adamant communist in my like AP U.S. history class, and I was like, hey man,
Where
I was
is
like, hey man,
I had a stick right here.
why are you a communist? And he would never give me an answer. He would say, you wouldn't understand. And it's like, well, I feel like maybe that's a common. I mean, I'm sure you've had more interactions with socialists, at least, or sorry, Marxists here on YouTube. Is that kind of
Yeah,
the general consensus? Is that you're just kind of lesser?
it's
Than
more
what you-
so of well, I can understand the Marxist point of view. They just seem like they're trying to describe the reality of the world, and they feel like it's sort of unfair to them. So they're trying to abolish the evil capitalist hierarchy. So
Hmm.
it'd be more
Yeah,
fairness.
because
It's definitely
profit.
more egalitarian of thinking on the Marxist end.
Yeah. So it's more of that. You would say, what would you say is probably like your core principle, and in contrast to a Marxist, because Marxist is what obviously equality, right? Uh,
Um, like the thing is, I sort of reject egalitarianism, and my core principle is just respecting private property as it is.
gotcha. Yeah, my main thing is just individual autonomy, right? Autonomy, sorry, autonomy. But just allowing individuals to be individuals, whether it's through property rights or just voluntary transactions, right? I mean, the obvious, you know, libertarian stance, right?
Yeah,
But yeah,
just the Marxist. Oh, I think the Marx anger at the world is able to connect with a lot of people.
it's interesting. Hi, how are you doing, man?
Hey, sorry about that, Voltaire. I kind of blanked for a second. What's up?
We're just talking about we're talking about culture, Marxism, and the usual stuff.
The good stuff, only the finest memes.
Yeah, the dankest.
Yeah. So we're just talking about well, ultimately, I think our conversation was first talking about pragmatic libertarianism.
Oh yeah, I'd like to hear your opinion on that pragmatic.
uh,
It's kind of your stance with, I guess, like I would say, like what are your core principles here
I
for?
mean, they are fundamentally libertarian. I wouldn't
Yeah,
say I'm necessarily the biggest believer in the NAP, as I think its use is limited, but I think it's kind of a good starting point, I guess. I'd also say that, well, I think the ethics of libertarianism are necessary to maintain like a properly functioning society, and that it spills into how we worry about economic policy and things like that as well. We also have to be conscious of the fact that liberty-minded people are being socially engineered to be non-existent essentially, and so we have to try to fight back against that as well.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. And I would agree. I was talking with Voltaire a little bit about, having reservations a little bit against the NAP, just because I think it's a little bit, it's to me, it's somewhat vague and open to interpretation, right? But again, I'm sure there's a, some good reform to go within, any sort of new developing libertarian thought, or at least modern, right? Contemporary.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so
Here, you guys keep talking, and I'll
yeah,
chime in whenever.
yeah, no worries. Voltaire, did you want to talk about anything else real
Uh,
quick, or what do you want to bring up?
I like to go back on how libertarians can be to use right wing populist tactics to make it seem more popular.
Okay,
Like
yeah,
have our revolution of sorts, which started
an
with Ron Paul,
intellectual
but it
revolution.
never works at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I know Voltaire was talking to me a little bit earlier about trying to reach a voter base and how one would go about doing that, from like some sort of libertarian platform. And he was talking about trying to, get a little bit closer in with the populace's, what they're valuing right now. Because we look at the two major parties and, they pander to their demographics. And, but I don't know.
Ron Paul had a good starting point. I think what people took from it, though, was half of the wrong message.
Mm.
I think what made him popular wasn't necessarily, I mean, at the time it was kind of weed legislation and things like that, although I think the popularity around that is sort of slowly dying away. But it was mainly, no foreign wars, I think was the big foreign policy point that made people happy. And End the Fed was a surprisingly effective campaign slogan, which I mean, I think some people just kind of chant because it's effective and they don't really know what it's mean. But at the same time, I think there's still some deep rooted gut where people don't like establishments that are so far out of their control, but still have control over their lives. So I think that's something that we could kind of harp on.
Um, the thing is, like I said before, we should definitely should use more populist tactics, like I said before, like Trump. You basically use the anger of many Midwesterners, how they felt like they got screwed over under the Obama administration. Like he was able to tap into that and just that's the thing I like Pragmatic Culture said, we just need to touch into that anti-establishment, that smaller government base. But even then we might draw to the wrong people, like conspiracy theorists um that may sour our revolution of sorts.
Yeah. So how would you guys, what would your guys' maybe, just kind of vague maybe theories on how you would break through to people who are like inherently collectivists, right? So with the, sweeping, whole race, identity and all this kind of crap that's going on right now. How do you feel like a libertarian message could reach those type of people that are just inherently collectivistic or, kind of turning culturally Marxist?
I say offer them free helicopter rides, but that's clearly not the answer.
Yeah. They like free
But
stuff.
I think it's it. I think we just need to tap in the underlying anger of someone just screwing them, like the
Mm.
underlying anger of the government, even though it might be for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
Um, I would say you give them what they want in incredibly small doses, so the net effect is benign. But at the same time, you work in stuff that favors small government policy. Like a lot of what Trump is doing and has promised is like, we're gonna rebuild the infrastructure of this country, and we're going to do a lot of good stuff like that and get people back to work through it's government jobs, so it's not like it's the best
Oh
thing in
yeah.
the world. But at the same time, at with that backdrop, he now has something he can use as political leverage with the Dems, and he's passing tax reductions, he's passing massive rollback of business regulations and things like that, So you kind of, you give them a little taste of what they asked for, and at the same time, you're getting in all this kind of supply-sided free market stuff going on. So by the time they've gotten theirs, we've gotten ours too, and eventually,
Gotcha.
you know, through bits and pieces, you eventually get to a wholly free market society, and people forgot they ever wanted the
Yeah. So
public works in the first place.
we're
What,
yeah
what about the problem who feel? What about the more progressive liberals? What should we do about them who feel like that the rich should be taxed more than any other people, and we should somehow control businesses because it might abuse people allegedly.
I guess kind of like what you were saying, just those slow compromises, right? Just almost exactly what kind of I'd feel like the identity politics has done itself is that it's just made small pushes, right? Little pushes here and there, and then it starts ingraining itself a little bit more in society, and maybe we start doing similar, just small pushes here and there, and start taking a little bit of ground there in the intellectual space. But for people who feel like the rich should be taxed so much, and I guess you would say they're super pro government. I mean, I think again, it's just like Pragmatic just said, it's just going to be a little bit of compromise, but maybe it's just going to have to be that people need to realize the value of open discussion and actually being, like I was talking to you earlier, Voltaire. I think a very important thing is just to be able to teach people skepticism. But again, that's that, or at least skepticism of their own beliefs, right? Teach them a little bit of introspection to where they can maybe get a little bit more perspective on the world, right? Because I know a lot of people are just basically bred to have certain biases and they never change it. So I feel like that's maybe the way with progressives.
Yeah,
But
I think the problem with the people the problem with socialists or Marxists is like they more so want to talk at us to saying how we are wrong about the world, that we need to abolish the capitalists, the robber barons, and essentially that makes essentially makes everything evil in the Marxist world viewpoint. They want to more so try forcibly change us.
yeah, and I feel like that happens on a multitude of sides, right? There's just the constant demonizing of the other side. Communists are evil. Libertarians don't care about poor people. All that kind of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
Even what I'm proposing, I know would be probably more exceedingly difficult than what Pragmatic proposed, which would just be these small little pushes. Because I mean, it's going to be really hard to teach people that they need to question their beliefs. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
tall order.
Well, the underlying thing to that isn't that, we're bending to them in any way that significantly gives them any gains, because there are some
Yeah,
times where,
exactly.
don't compromise whatsoever on certain things. Like there are certain issues where compromise wholly benefits the other side. Like any type of gun legislation is essentially going to be used as leverage or precedent by the other side going forward. So don't
Oh yeah, most
compromise
definitely.
on gun legislation. Don't compromise on things like certain racial politics or anything
Mhm.
like that, because that's only going to be used as their incrementalism. So it's giving them some of what they want, and they want it, and it might not
Yeah,
necessarily be good
it's
for
giving
us,
them
but
the
it's really
illusion
not a
that
net negative for us.
it's giving them the illusion that they're winning something, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's not oh yeah, we'll hand over rifles if you let us cut taxes, and it's like okay, I'm probably not going to do that. But
Yeah, and like
no, yeah,
that's kind of what the Dems did with Reagan back in the day. They said, "All right, we'll give you what you want for immigration and harsher laws and other policies like that." And he said, "All right, and I'll give you guys amnesty, and you guys have to follow through." And they played him. That he never
yeah,
actually got what he wanted out of it.
yeah. So it's a little political sleight of hand there. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
man.
so we have to be wary of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be it's a cryptic game. I mean,
Hmm.
the whole system is. But man, like how do we feel about things going on right now? Do we think things are getting even more radical, or do we think maybe things are starting to kind of go back to the center again, or how are we feeling about the certain relations right now? At least political climate that is largely
Uh,
unchanged, or
I think Volt is still muted,
oh
but when he comes back, I'll let him go. But
yeah.
I think the center is rapidly collapsing, and I think the enough of the data supports that. But even besides that, you're getting various groups of people who prefer to talk at you rather than talk with you, and I think
Oh,
that's a
definitely.
problem. You said.
Centrists
Yeah.
are facts. But for real, the
Nice.
thing about centrism is that it's more so about you not. It's really more so about a popularity contest with most centrists online, to be honest.
Mm. You mean like a popular, content creator centrists, or you mean like political, like actual?
Like a bit of both, to be honest.
Gotcha. That's
Because I mean,
interesting.
centrism in the political sense has never really been like, there's no center political
Yeah.
party. What happens is one way or another, someone from one of the parties, usually, leftists, is going to try to frame centrism as their starting position. Like, oh,
Yeah.
all like, common sense gun control or common sense
Yeah,
tax
yeah,
reform, that kind of thing.
yeah, and
Safe,
that's
legal, and
definitely,
rare.
and I think that's definitely a tactic of the Democrats for sure. They seem a bit more, because Republicans are painted as at least I feel like, at least the community I've been in, they've been painted a little bit more radical, right? Obviously, both sides have been painted radical, but I feel like in most people's eyes, Democrats are just trying to be reasonable, right? They're just trying to help the poor people, They're just trying to make
I
sure that the Las Vegas shooting doesn't happen again.
But with libertarians and Republican and conservatives, be like, you are a racist, bigot, homophobe, and you hate the poor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just inflammatory dialogue, really.
But hey, everybody in this chat room do hate the poor on some level and want to cut their welfare benefits and force them to be responsible for their families. Yeah, we definitely hate the poor.
Well, I mean, it's not. It's we'll get smeared with this no matter what. But I think so, to talk
Oh
about
yeah,
what you were talking about, intellectual. I think people are. I think the myth that the left is only there to be like the party of reason and not, they just want to help the poor and make things safe. I think that facade is kind of slowly being torn away, and I think
yeah,
that's what's benefiting us. Now we just have to make sure that we don't become them, in that we don't start talking at people again, because we haven't
yes,
achieved victory
yeah,
yet. We're still far from it. So we
yeah,
need to
most
make
definitely.
sure that whatchamacallit
Also,
that
it,
we
it might help that people pay more attention who they voting for as their representatives and senators.
yeah, true,
Yeah,
true.
So,
that's hard.
because
Yeah, it's
because
hard to get the votes for them.
the Congress still has a lot of power than the president. Like it's sort of like I think it's sort of like a misconception in our society that the president is almighty and powerful. But I think in reality it's more of the legislators and the courts, if anything else. The president is more so an enforcer of laws, if anything else.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem no matter what. But at the same time, it's just going to have to be something we deal with going forward, because it's very
Mhm.
hard to once wrote this. It's very hard to kind of strip away power from an office once it's been invested there, just because people become used to it and they want this kind of action done.
Oh yeah,
So it's up to us now to use it to our advantage, really.
yeah, and they'll protect it. And if they're already in a position of power, it's much easier for them to protect those things. So how the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, you know, basically somewhat collude to make sure that those are the two major parties. At least with there's I guess there's some evidence to support that I've heard, but at least when it comes to like the presidential debates,
Yeah,
you only get
especially then.
Republicans and
The
Democrats on
way
the
I see
stage.
the Republicans and Democrats, I view them as basically the same party. They may use different rhetoric and pander to the same demographics, but they both want big governments in different ways. I.e., the right wingers tendingly want a big military
The neocons.
and supporting the Zionist land of Israel. And the same goes with the Democrats who want want more government in schools, family, parenting, essentially. Um, they just pander to different grads, but at the end of the day, they both want bigger government in different areas.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I know we all basically agree on is that I think it's so important that you stay principled, I guess, because and you stick to the point, like we keep saying, just don't talk at them. Actually, oh man, because it's so difficult, right? Because we want to get into that emotional state where we can just kind of scream or do all that kind of stuff, and it's hard too because it's not, it seems so effective to just use the tactics of the radicals on both sides, right? Because
Yeah.
it gets so many ears, it gets so much press coverage when you say something crazy, or I mean, that's how Donald Trump got so much popularity. He just said so many inflammatory things.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I think there is a point, have your principles and keep them, but I kind of like that one Chris Cantwell quote that was kind of like, principles are a luxury afforded to winners. And, so he wasn't saying abandon your
Gotcha.
beliefs, but
Oh no, yeah, I definitely agree that there can be certain things that we can employ, right? You get a lot of, you could look at someone like, I don't know, you could say someone like Ben Shapiro, right? And he uses principles, but he might also employ something like, a little bit of wit and humor, right, to kind of reach a more grand audience, right, to get a little bit more persuasion through, right?
Yep.
And
yeah.
that's definitely something that we can employ for. Yeah, obviously, yeah. I'm definitely not arguing to be a principled zombie, right? Where it's just 100%. You definitely want to be charismatic, and you definitely want to use, some amount of persuasion tactics, right?
That's
But
probably
it's
why
more about
Milo is so popular as a procurator. If anything else, he doesn't really offer anything of substance half the time.
yeah. I mean, he's a dangerous faggot for sure.
Not really. He's more of a guy who would like to take black dick up the ass. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's useful in that he stirs the pot in a more
Yeah,
interesting way than someone like Ben Shapiro.
definitely.
He's nowhere as smart as Ben Shapiro, but Ben Shapiro is just, he's your basic bitch conservative. Like, a lot of his
Yeah,
points and a lot of what he does is very much within establishment lines. It's, all
definitely.
this talking about various different things in a safe PC kind of way, even though he's supposedly very anti PC. It's all, for good.
I do find those small, contradictions within Ben Shapiro. Let's not be offended, and then he constantly, complains about how Milo would have his fans bully him and stuff like that, or how Milo would send a picture of a black baby. And,
I think Ben
Ben
Shapiro is
Shapiro's
just a
calling a cut.
I think Shapiro is more of a
You know,
well, I like the guy. I think he's more of a and he kind of deserves it more of an intellectual snob than anything else. It's just the arrogance of I'm smarter than you, and and I'm really good at debating and rhetoric.
yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
they're both very useful because they appeal to young people. I mean, I know that they specifically are the ones that got me into thinking about anything to do with philosophy or politics. I'm in high school and I see this video of Milo Yiannopoulos destroying feminists, and I was like, wow, I've disagreed with these people, most of my high school career, and there's finally somebody saying like basically punching them out basically, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And it was good enough to draw me in, right? And I'm not the largest intellectual, there's still so much to learn, but it was enough to bring me in and keep me interested, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
I just wish that more libertarians on the Austrian side just be more well known and popular because they do have more insightfulness when it comes to society and what's going on with our government. It's like someone say like Rothbard, Nozick, or even Hop.
Yeah. Well, I think I think the point you made, intellectual, was the good one. Like, these guys are a jumping off point. They're the
Exactly.
ones to, get you into something. And then they're the ones to kind of, they'll take you to these other people, and, it's up to you on how far you want to go. Because if you just stay at their kind of surface level, like, you know, what
Yeah,
Crowder or Ben Shapiro or Milo
yeah.
offer, it's very surface level. And if you were to just stay there, you're still not going to win any actual debates against leftists or things like that. I mean, you might,
Yeah.
because some are that dumb, but you need to go further on your own.
Oh,
And I think,
yeah, you're going to beat the low hanging fruit, right? But once you
yeah,
hit, someone who has, who's an actual intellectual, it's going to be a lot harder, right? So, I'll try to use Ben Shapiro's tactics on abortion or something, right, against some leftists. And if they're educated on the topic, I just won't win with those tactics because he's just used to, you know, yelling at talking to a college student who has no idea. But once you get in the actual arena, you need to have a little,
you might not win
I
a
think
debate
again,
against. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead. I was done.
Well, it's like, exactly, because you're not going to win a debate necessarily against like a hardcore Zizek fan or anything like that. If he's like a really well educated in some kind of Marxist philosophy that you've never even heard of, and so debating him would be exceptionally hard. I mean, it doesn't help that Marxism is the most confounded and convoluted philosophy to exist on the face of the earth. But I mean, if you're not properly skilled in how to dismiss those points, then you're just going to end up looking like the idiot, and you leave yourself in a state where you question what you believe.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like it's very important to promote that idea of just self-knowledge too, because I know, at least for me, even basic in the early stages, even now, I try to have a lot of introspection and a lot of things that I think and get better at it. But on the surface level, I took anything Ben Shapiro or Milo said, and I just believed it. Even if they were right, but it still was just, oh, they're very persuasive. And I feel like promoting that self-knowledge, so these people who get that starting off point, at least like me, who kind of got pulled in by the pop entertaining politic, sphere, right? So Milo's really entertaining to see. But if you get that principle of, actually developing yourself, in philosophy or even, any sort of political theory, I feel like that's going to be most important, just teaching people to just read. I mean, just read works.
Oh, yeah.
And,
man, it's so much easier to watch videos all the time and just not really learn anything.
It really is. But I'm making myself now. I'm making myself read.
You're not. Yeah, I think you're right. It's more so how far you're willing to go. You might be like a very basic and limited normie conservative, or you could be like a very hardcore conservative or a hardcore libertarian or a hardcore leftist. It really depends what literature you read, how much you research into the topic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and again, it's not like we want to socially engineer people. I just feel like it's very important that, I know a lot of the philosophers of old, even like Plato, just talked about how people should just strive for more knowledge and try to, attain more for themselves so they can feel more fulfillment. And I think even, I think Adam Smith actually had a lot, he had a lot of concerns about people being fulfilled within, a hyper industrialized, nation, and how that they should try to learn more and try to learn more about philosophy and different virtues. And I think that's very important. But again, how do you attain that? Do you make incentives to the government to change, public schooling system? Do you, make it to where it's all private education, and then the private sector takes care of that? I mean,
it's got to be so hard to promote private education to everybody, because they feel like everybody's just going to be screwed under a private education when it really not going to be like that. It's really, like I said, it's really misanthropic how people really distrust the ideas of profit and distrust the ideas of the free market, essentially taking care of your offspring and children.
Well, I mean, that's kind of one of the things, that's something we focus on way down the line, because eventually what we have to show people is that, at least in this specific issue, is that the government systems are so inextricably biased. Like, you can't untangle it. Like, you can't have, there isn't an inherent leftist bias. And so, people who don't mind that bias will keep going there. But eventually, the people who, whatchamacallit, who want their kids to be educated in some other open kind of perspective, or at least, or, even openly right wing, then they'll send them to, private schools or homeschool them or something. And even though schools are still getting their tax dollars, if they don't have the parents there, and if there's not a, healthy student teacher, whatever relationship surrounding that school, shit's going to fall apart one way or another, because, money isn't everything.
Yeah. And maybe all it takes is that it just needs to be a group of, intellectuals to create some sort of platform to where, because I mean, with the age of this technology, I mean, creating some sort of brand and creating some sort of, place where you can spread ideas is easier than ever, right? Or at least for the moment, until you start getting internet
Okay,
censorship. Right?
okay.
But
For the ideas
yeah,
intellectual, should the new atheist four horsemen be those leading intellectuals? Pragmatic culture.
No, they're not. Calling them intellectuals outside of their fields of study is wrong. Like, I don't know. All I know is that Sam Harris is a neuroscience, and well, like, what is Richard Dawkins? Is he some kind of biologist or something?
I thought he was like a. Wait, let me see here. Richard
Wait,
Dawkins.
okay. Richard Dawkins is a scientist. Well, dang, Daniel Denning. I don't know what he is.
Well, like,
Um,
what specifically is Richard Dawkins a scientist of?
He's an ethologist, evolutionary biologist.
Okay,
Richard Dawkins.
all right, that explains a lot. Because fucking, I picked up his book, The God Delusion, once
Mm.
just in Barnes and Noble to just sit down and read for a quick second, and it was literally just him like sucking the cock of like Charles Darwin's ghost, essentially.
okay.
Yeah.
What about the dead horseman Hitchens?
He was all right in small doses, but he had an incredible. He wasn't just an atheist; he was a legitimate anti-theist from everything I've seen of him, which is retarded because you know everything you essentially believe about the Western world today was first thought of by Christian philosophers largely, and so his rejection of religion as a necessary benefit to society as it helps social cohesion greatly was stupid. And I mean, I'm Catholic, so he'd constantly go on about the Catholic Church being this great fucking evil because John Paul II was like friends with Pinochet and Franco and all this garbage, and he was really just a basic bitch leftist. He's a slightly more intelligent version of AIU essentially.
Mm.
But Hitchen was a political journalist and a Trotskyite at some point. Maybe thank God he died from his throat cancer and don't get the helicopter.
Yeah, I mean, he was. That's another thing. He was a political journalist. People think what he said was biting at the time, and maybe it was because it was saying some dangerous opinions. But that doesn't make him any more of like an intellectual force than Milo. So why people hold him in this high
Oh
regard
yeah.
is beyond me.
Oh yeah.
Well, he was a very charming individual and with a deep voice. And I wish his brother was actually more famous.
Who is
Mm.
his brother? I've heard about his brother. Who is he?
Peter Hitchens. He's
What
a
is?
he's the opposite. He's the literal opposite of Christopher. He's right wing, deeply religious, and
Oh
have
wow.
and different views. Like they disagree on virtually
That's
everything.
interesting.
That's pretty
Huh.
sweet.
That's pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Like he considers himself a Birkin conservative. I think
Okay.
Oh, a Berkeleyan or
a Birkin conservative of sorts. I think. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just like I think yeah. I know I sort of derailed it because I really want to know his thoughts on new atheism. But I think we should be more careful of these intellectuals because they do tend to be very arrogant when it comes to their field, and they think they have authority on topics that they don't know what they're talking about. This is why I sort of despise the new atheist leaders, such as because they are leftist for the most part.
Yeah, like
Um,
that's a good point. They'll quickly, people have ego problems one way or another, whether or not they're willing to admit it. And so, giving someone the title of intellectual, very quickly kind of like runs, it gives them ideas like they're like the shit and they're the
Oh yeah,
only
most
voice for a
definitely.
movement.
Most definitely.
Sorry, go ahead.
And then
just
and then again, it comes back to they call themselves skeptics, but then they never, then they stop questioning their own beliefs because they feel they're in a position of authority,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
there's no way that religion, because
see. I
the jury's still out
just
for me on the whole religion deal, because I've
see.
heard, multiple sides. I'm personally an ex-Christian, but things could change. Who knows?
Hmm.
See, I just use skepticism to to
Oh
debunk your
no.
point.
Shut up, Voltaire.
No.
What?
No.
I can't make an armor skeptic joke.
It's
Oh
a dead
no.
meme. Dead meme.
Oh no. Oh man, that was too funny. That
Well,
But
was too.
well, I take
honestly,
any chance to shit on the skeptic community though.
Mhm.
yeah, true enough. But I mean, like, if we want to get a movement going, I think the best thing to do is, like you said, be wary of intellectuals. Like, I think
Mhm.
guys like Ramsey Paul and Jared Taylor are good examples of people who are intellectuals but haven't had it gone to their head yet because they're
Mhm.
still, mainly because their beliefs are still highly fringed and they're viewed in a very negative light. So I
Yeah.
think that helps keep them on their toes. But I still think they're just like, they're humble, down to earth guys pretty much all the time who are explain things very calmly. But even then, I think the guys who will benefit a movement like ours most are the people like the James Alsops of the world or the Nick Fuenteses because they're grassroots organizers who focus a lot on optics, who know the political landscape and know how to work it and know how to make the opposition this. And so,
What about someone like Friedman or Soul?
yeah, they're good too. I mean, they're kind of the more, they're the people friendly kind of intellectuals that we can have. But I think you got to start somewhere with like the guys like even like a Goldwater or someone, a real, people's people who's going to speak to people's direct interests and speak either the things that might not really want to be said and that kind of thing. And then from there, you can kind of introduce people to the more rigorous backbone of the ideology.
Yeah,
Like
start making a more, libertarian kind of cultural atmosphere within the community, right?
yeah, I
Um,
wish
Yeah,
someone
exactly.
like Rothbard were more famous in his life actually.
rough part.
I don't know. I mean, he was good for econ and stuff, but I think libertarianism is so hard to. I was just thinking about this. Libertarianism and liberalism and Enlightenment philosophy in general is growing more and more hard to sell because it's devoid of any necessary value system. Like, all it says to value is, like, all right, don't infringe upon other people's rights.
Yeah, it
And,
puts the value just purely on the individual, right? Just value your individualism, and and
Well, we could be like Max
yeah.
Stern or egoist. Um, like
Well,
where that's
thankfully,
individuals as we
thank
can get.
thankfully it didn't go that far, so we're not stern right egoists. But I mean, the reason groups like the alt right are gaining so much appeal is because
oh yeah,
they have a value system beyond just saying, "Oh, freedom for freedom's
oh
sake."
yeah,
And
that's a
so,
perfect point.
yeah, and so we need to. I think if we're going to do that, we need to move away from kind of the Jeffrey Tucker libertarianism where, oh, so long as it's free, it's so long as you're not hurting anyone else in the process, it's fine. And we need to start injecting our own value system, one that's never really been tried before. And I think that's why the alt right still has some excess and still exists because they're
Oh,
inserting a value system that necessarily hasn't existed in the US and Western Europe more broadly for a very long time. So
oh
What
they're
yeah,
about Rothbardian ethics though? Can we just
uh,
can we use that in our bio system because that definitely appealed to some people?
I mean, I there are some problems I have with the way people frame Rothbard's ethics, but I'd agree with them on whole that it's not a good ethical model in the slightest.
Okay, what about the hobby instead of ethics?
I don't think he necessarily has a set of. I mean, he does, but I don't. Is there any work he has written that really expounds upon it? Like I get, physically remove communists and Democrats. That whole lot.
Well,
But is
there's a
there?
book called Economics and Ethics of Private Property.
Oh, all right. Then I'll grab me some of that and see how that
yeah. Love
goes.
to see how that goes. Yeah, I'll write that down. What was the book? It was just
Yeah,
economics and ethics or whatever.
Economics and Ethics of Private Property. I read
Okay.
some of it. Just I try to avoid the ethics part because I really wasn't interested in learning ethics, but more so economics.
Mm,
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I feel my whole thing is that I feel like if we were able to harness like pure like I guess you could say the infectious nature of movements like Milo's or Ben Shapiro, or even even you think of someone like the skeptic community on YouTube, just kind of how infectious they're the whole and not in necessarily an awful way, but it just reaches people, right? It's entertaining to people. But
I think the
again,
closest libertarian to the skeptic community is Sargon of Akkad, but I'm not saying a really high bar on that one.
Yeah, no, I mean the funniest thing about Sargon of Akkad is him making all these helicopter memes himself, when in reality he's like not even on, he's not even like necessarily off the short list of people who are going to get the helicopter ride.
Wait, you don't like Sargon of Akkad?
No, I think he's fine. I loved his series on Syria. It was incredibly well researched and things
oh
like
yeah,
that. Like it was
oh that's
research
fantastic.
paper level, but I mean, on the whole, he still, at least economically speaking, he still supports like kind of this rampant secularization. He doesn't talk about it the most, but it's still very obviously present in his videos, and that in a large part has been contributing to the moral decay of our society. And on top of that, he's in favor of one of the most bloated welfare states to exist on the face of the earth. Like he falls
Yeah,
pretty solidly in that bottom left hand quadrant, not like
yeah,
the ANCOM part of it, but
yeah. I
enough
do
to
remember
warrant a
him saying
helicopter
that.
ride, definitely.
Actually,
Yeah.
I kind of wish I could have challenged him more on that when I have the opportunity to talk to him.
When did you talk to him?
Hmm.
It was a good,
Oh, you're in a conversation with Academic Agent, right?
yeah,
And
Sargon
Sargon.
of Akkad here on the stream. I wish I have a more.
Yeah.
Oh,
I wish I challenged him a little bit more on the National Health Service.
I mean, don't
Hmm.
don't go picking fights unnecessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't look good. That kind of makes it look
Yeah.
petty.
Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. I always want to talk to Sargon of Akkad, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I could have challenged him a little bit more.
no,
I
no, no.
mean,
I
you could
get
at
you,
least
but I
have a
mean,
discussion on it, right? Yeah, just not being aggressive. Because
yeah, like
then
if
you
the
just,
conversation wasn't tending towards that in the first place, then don't be the guy who's like, "Hey, I disagree with you on this, and I want to talk about it,
yeah,
even though we weren't talking about it
yeah, point
first."
him out in the public
No,
square.
I saw it brought up, and I saw it asking what he thoughts on analytical capitalism. And he's immediately thought my roads.
Oh, well, he was just memeing you. I'm sure. I'm sure he understands that. I mean, if he doesn't, that's
Yeah,
pretty silly. Um, but
Is
I
academic
don't know.
agent, is he an Austrian minarchist or is he ANCAP?
He's not ANCAP or
yeah,
much of a Austrian. Well, I can gather, he preferred the Chicago school because I think academic AJ is more of a realist minarchist at a good day.
mm.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, I do remember him. He had a video I was listening to. He was describing the different schools of economics, and he was speaking really highly of the Chicago school. So it sounded a little bit kind of like that. I know he's for sure because I'd watched the debate for the ANCAPs and status or whatever. And
Wait, was that the one with like Facebook anarchy ball?
I think so. Yeah.
I, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was in it.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't like I actually, yeah, that's right. That was the one you were in Voltaire. I thought you were talking about the one where ANCAP Ball actually debated Sargon himself.
Oh no, I never
No,
saw that.
no. I just wait. How I did in that debate? It's been a while.
I haven't actually watched it yet. I've been meaning to, but I feel like the case with most ANCAPs, especially the Facebook Anarchy Ball guy, is
Yeah.
that they're incapable of making the case to people who aren't already libertarians,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. That's the problem.
therefore they never get anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just Do you think someone like Shane Killing is a good example of this?
Yeah, Shane Killian, Anarchy Ball again, not like Dapperton, but like the actual Twitter, Facebook Anarchy Ball.
Yeah.
Um, although I can't imagine Dapperton would be too much better, but
Yeah, I mean, Dapperton's not too much of an intellectual. I mean, when I had first got introduced to anarcho-capitalism, I kind of watched some of the videos, and I was like, that's kind of interesting. But then after that, there's really no value.
yeah,
Not to be, I'm not being a prick about it. It's just,
I think
you know,
Dapperton don't read much of the literature in ANCAP.
I mean,
yeah,
it's not like I don't like holding this false standard where, oh, if you don't necessarily read this shit, you're not
yeah,
considered the
No, like,
intellect, but I mean, it's important. I'm not gonna lie, it's important to have like the backbone. Like,
Yeah, it's to get the perspective and the wisdom of the actual movement, right? Because you can be an armchair libertarian. Obviously, again, like I know for sure, I need to do more reading, and that's why I've been doing it lately. And I do find it. I mean, there was, I was reading a little bit about Marx today, and there were some things that I didn't know about him, and I was like, oh wow, I've been kind of, I had these.
all you need to know about Marx was that he was a drunkard, impregnated his maid. He
Impregnated
was
his
a
maid.
parasite to English most for the last 15 years of his life. And
Jesus.
a other anarchist, a socialist anarchist, warned him that his ideal will lead to a totalitarian mafia state. Yeah, I might take everything he says with a pinch of salt.
well, I mean, I haven't read any of Capital, but I've been meaning to. And like,
Yeah.
the thing with those fucking books, though, is that you're almost required to read Hegel beforehand. But what I've been told by former communists is that not to actually read Hegel, read the people who kind of synthesize his work and make it more understandable. Because reading, that's a problem with a lot of the German philosophers, especially like you see it in Nietzsche and Kant too.
Oh yeah.
The German language
Oh
is
man.
just so stupid. It's not stupid, but it's
Yeah.
so
Complicated.
yeah, it's complicated and it makes everything harder. So if you have to have a baseline, if like Marx is already ridiculously complicated and hard to understand, and if you have to have a basis in Hegel, who is almost just as convoluted but even harder to understand because of the German, then you're setting yourself up for a way where you're never really going to get to the bottom of what either of them are trying to talk about.
Actually,
Yeah.
I think most Marxists only know what Marx actually advocated for. Actually, I mean serious with that because if you actually read the correspondent letters and between Engels and the other anarchists of his time, he was very very confusing actually.
Yeah, I'm
Like
sure.
it's that's the thing about Marx. You can't just read the first three volumes of Capital and understand the Marx. I think you just need to keep on doing, keep on digging what Marx say, and even including his correspondence letter with Engels to understand his mindset. That's kind of show how really complex Marx was.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with this whole, kind of spreading libertarianism more, like, I mean, I keep, I'm probably just repeating this, and I think it's harnessing the different elements within the movement in general and just finding, I almost feel like it'd be great if there was some sort of like, I wouldn't say collective, but I mean,
Well,
just
I don't think
yeah, go ahead.
I think there should be kind of a collective because I think one of the things libertarians need to tackle is that humans have innately collectivist interests. We're tribal animals at the end of the
Yeah.
day still, and so I think
Yeah,
that's
and that's that's what I was going to
Yeah,
get to
man.
was I when I say I don't mean collectivism, I mean that I think it's important to have a collective that is individuals, right? It's not a group think like, okay, well, since we're part of the group, we're going to think this specifically. I think it's important.
Wannabe intellectual.
Yeah.
You must think and breathe Marx every single day till you
Uh,
become part of our group collective.
I
And
got to.
go debate some and retarded and contradictory ANCAPs and make fun of them and talk at them. Okay,
All right.
That's how you join the Marxist YouTube community.
Every morning and every night before I go to bed, I'm going to read Papa Marx. I'm going to make sure I do it. I'm going
Yes,
to
actually,
have dreams about the proletariat.
come and think of it, they in the Soviet. I read a book about Marx. It's free on the Ludwig von Mises Institute called Recum. I don't know, something Latin for Marx, and yeah, it was this Russian guy who worked for the Gorbachev government. It sort of explained that Marx is really like a cult of personality in the Soviet Union, just like saying this was the father, and it was kind of interesting actually.
Hmm. But yeah, like you were saying, pragmatic. I do think it's actually important for there to be the movement kind of come together, because I know it's so fragmented, because I think, and maybe it's just that idea of like hyper individualism, to where it's like, we just can't, I mean, because I know I fall prey to that too, because I like constantly, I'm like, I don't want to be a part of a group, because I get, I have that fantasy about being so individualistic, right? I think it's very important for them to still be, skeptical of anything that the group comes to a conclusion to. But I think it's almost imperative that there's some sort of, working together. There's some sort of like, I don't want to say brand, some sort of like,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah, brand isn't necessarily a bad way to put it, but I think, we can't have this kind of screeching when I
We're
think you
not
mentioned.
Ayn Rand objectivists here.
What's up?
We're not ranting objectivists here. We're not part of a cult. I hope we're not part of a cult anyway.
Don't tell Dusty he's a part of a cult.
It's not my fault that Rand in her life was a cult of personality. It's not my fault that her objectivism is like borderline religion. It's not my fault.
I mean, well, I think what we can't do is I'm less worried about the cultish aspect and less worried about I think some objectivists, action propertarians, actually have a good view of this, where we have to worry about the kind of like basic kind of bitch libertarians who screech at any hint of a collective being wanted or hinted at, or that there's some greater moral standard than just freedom. Like, do you guys know about the speech Jeff Diaz gave at the Mises Institute?
No.
Oh, it sounds familiar. Go ahead and give me.
Yeah, you might have heard of it. Jeff Diaz gave a speech, essentially kind of addressing the topic we're talking about now on pragmatic liberty and how to best promote the libertarian message going forward. And towards the end, he kind of mentioned that people today still care about blood and soil, and that libertarians risk gaining a significant following if they ignore that. That was almost verbatim the quote. And then you
Yeah,
have people like the new Libertarian Party chair, Nick Sarwark, absolutely autistically screeching over it because it was, it was a callback to, oh, evil, racist white men, yada, yada. It's like
yeah,
leftist moral grandstanding,
yeah.
essentially. And
Autism's a
they're
choice.
saying it's like, oh, it's like, paleocon religious talk trying to appeal to white nationalists and
Yeah,
that kind of thing, as if that were even a bad thing in itself. Like if you were trying to say that, oh, they're emphasizing some kind of economic collectivism, then you might have a case. But there's no way in hell anybody could construe Jeff Diaz's speech as advocating such. It's literally that one line that he went off the rails about, and it was
yeah,
people attacked
and I do
Oh.
Mises
definitely agree
and
with
Tom
that.
Woods for no apparent reason. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, maybe left libertarianism probably should, like sort of go, like sort of die out. Okay, but
Well, I mean, the Libertarian
It's a
Party, as we
helicopter,
know
right?
it now, needs to go away. Like seriously, it's no longer useful to actually spreading liberty in any meaningful sense. Like, I mean, just
we
look at Austin Peterson. He's running for senatorship in Missouri right now, and he's not doing too bad. I haven't. Normally, the polls don't include him at all, but you can still clearly see that there's a presence of him. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we have to invade the Republican Party essentially.
oh
you
yeah,
know the WWE wrestler Kane.
Kane,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I heard he was a libertarian. I think he's
he is.
running a mayor seat in Knoxville, the place he lives.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope he does well. It's kind of cool to have that kind of celebrity status and, that kind of, look, I'm not opposed to libertarians on sort of a much more local level, but at the same time, there are still libertarians promoting open borders, and I think that's an out and out mistake. Like,
Mm.
But
it gets dangerous when you're trying to undermine, what are considered national interests. And so
Oh yeah,
I think we're best at the local level,
actually, come
probably
to think
not.
of it, I think we should hijack the nationalist movement. I think that's the only way to get the libertarians beyond the forefront again. Is just sort of just hijack nationalism.
yeah. I think again, you're saying nationalism, but I think the biggest thing is just use the modern forms of communication. Just have a strong like again, like make a a group or whatever you want to call it, or some sort of movement, and just have a good social media presence, have a good content presence, have create things, and get the ideas flowing to people. Because I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I think I remember, I don't know, I think it was like a Joe Rogan podcast with like I think it was I forget the guy, Gary Johnson, and I know they were talking about libertarianism, and it's just I think if you ask the average person what a libertarian is, they have no idea.
Well,
Or
they most
or
most
they have
likely people are going to say socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Most people are going to say that.
or they have some sort of like straw man version of it. I mean, I remember asking teachers or my higher ups in my school. I was like, yeah, how do you feel about libertarianism? And they'd say, well, how do you get the roads? And I was like, what the hell?
I think it's kind of sad that they think about the roads, my roads, and I just be like, how did people build the roads for the government monopolize it? I wonder how they build the roads.
But it's
Actually,
just yeah.
actually, actually, one of my biggest frustrations, like I've been on Twitter way too much lately, and I've just been going around each community, and they seem like they kind of despise libertarians, each political community anyway, because it seemed like they seem like they got in their head that libertarians are trying to reach some type of utopia where freedoms are limited and property rights and free market capitalism will make everybody rich. I think that's a rather highly misunderstanding what libertarians actually advocate for, or or what they believe. Well, I think it's kind of our fault because we do kind of speak in that, but then again, it's kind of dishonest on the other political communities.
But do we think? Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing.
Okay.
Just
So
like seriously, why do people think libertarians are some type of utopians?
It
what
it
we say,
mainly goes back to the type of libertarians who end up presenting themselves. I
Oh yeah,
mean, when
most
you have
definitely.
people at the Libertarian Party who Gary Johnson got booed once for saying that he didn't mind the fact that driver's licenses existed, and
Yeah, it's like, oh man.
when you have
It's
presentation like that, it's kind of hard to take you seriously because, in all honesty, look, I mean, it's not like I don't think, again, services to determine who's qualified to drive a car are better off, everything's better off privatized. I'll continue to defend that. But like the idea that there shouldn't be any minimum requirement to drive a car is
yeah,
kind
because
of what it
yeah,
seems like. I mean, maybe they were actually advocating that. I don't know. I didn't see the
yeah.
entire bit of the convention where they were talking about that. But when you present like that, when you optics to that degree, it looks very bad.
Oh yeah,
I think that's a highly unfair straw man on other political communities out there saying that libertarians are unrealistic or utopian. That's probably one of the reasons why like a lot of people like Ron Paul, but he was so weak on his foreign policy. Like if you ask people that,
hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, the foreign policy was a good thing, and I think that's one of the reasons the alt right still has won over a lot of libertarians too, because of like the foreign policy similarities and a couple other things.
Yeah,
But
and they just provide a solid identity too. I mean,
Oh man, foreign policy. You know that
yeah,
guy on Twitter?
oh no.
oh god,
You know that
secular
guy?
hawk, is this about him?
No, this guy Warhawk. He's like
Uh, every day, I swear, I scroll through Twitter and I see you talking about
Oh,
something.
and so I can't really talk to him because I think everything he say is BS for one thing, and I kind of have to be like he thinks that the Russians hacked the election. I try to tell him every time that I try to tell him that the Russians did hack the election, and he sent me some tweet thread, and just kind of have to read it, and I just like, are you for real? Just, are you kidding me?
Jeez.
yeah,
That's
no, I mean, ostensibly, what he thinks about foreign policy would be interesting if it actually worked, but we've tested it. It doesn't. And at
Wait,
the
it
end of
doesn't.
the
Wait, we need to try again, though. We need to keep trying again. We need to try nation building, which fails. We need to try intervention and start setting democracy. Democracy is a horrible thing for a culture that's based on totalitarianism. And we need to keep doing the same thing over and over again until we get this right. I don't care what these idiot ideologue libertarians have to say on this. I know my foreign policy plan, and it will work this time. Like we've been in Iraq for ever since I was basically born. But okay, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, the point to argue with them really is that the big thing is like it's a cultural difference. You can't install like as much as people hate the idea of what Saddam did to the Kurds in Iraq and what he was doing to his country and what all these horrible brutal dictators were doing, at the end of the day, they were still the best option.
But hey, it's
And
real
trying to
politic,
do
and
what we did.
it's real politic, and it's our national self-interest to depose these leaders for some reason, which I can't see.
Yep.
So would we think that the Libertarian Party would probably want to take, because I know, Voltaire was one of talking about, kind of political pragmatism, or libertarian pragmatism or pragmatic libertarianism. Do we think that's a good, shift for the movement, or do we think it needs to shift in another direction? Like if it were to present itself, what would probably be the best form?
Well, the best form is that the government. I think the best form is to present libertarians and the libertarians that the government is too big. The government is just basically become too bureaucratic, too overreaching. We need to have more. We just need to limit the size of the government and promote state rights and have a somewhat nationalistic foreign policy because we're kind of empower our enemies at the same time.
Mm.
I mean, really, I think that we should promote those things, but I think we need to do it by invading a movement that already has some steam and some political sway. Like obviously, we're kind of competing for the Republican Party right now with the alt-right, and fighting them. I think we should kind of use them as well. Whatchamacallit? It's they have the right idea with a lot of the nationalistic sentiments, and they play well into the whole wants of the American mind, and so it's a good idea to kind of take advantage of them. I think if we just make the alt-right economically literate, I think that's a functioning movement right there. Like if we make them dependent on economic protectionism and this kind of public works jargon, again, incrementalism. You offer to them,
or we could have
them
other
first because
Pinochet.
that's what they want, and then what?
We could have other Pinochet,
I mean, if anything serious happens come November 4th, I'm hoping Trump declares martial law and we start executing communists in the street. But
okay, that's a little bit extreme there. I just hope the riot police beat the ever living crap out of them. That's the best thing I hope for these people.
Well, I have an even more secretive desire that's not so secret. My secret plan is that after the November 4th riots, Trump actually declares Antifa a full-on terrorist group and starts cracking down on them super hard. Like, I think we should bring back public executions just for them.
Okay. Oh, come on. That's a little messed up. No.
The executions would just be the helicopter rides.
Well, yeah, helicopter rides, but don't drop them into the ocean. Literally, just like have them drop into the center of town square.
Or just drop them in.
No, my secret hope is that he cracks.
Okay, but seriously, I don't think Trump needs to start a military state for a bunch of teenagers who don't know what they're talking about.
It's not just the teenagers though. It's the Marxist professors in college who are indoctrinated.
That's the real people that we should execute though. The Marxist professors.
Oh geez.
Eliminate their foot soldiers too before the foot soldiers become the intellectuals. No, but hold on. I'm not even
we need to eliminate the king first. That's the thing. We need to eliminate the king. All of them are pawns anyway, we just need to take out the king.
As they appear.
Come on.
Hold on. I'm not even finished with it. There's another stage to this. So after Trump cracks down on Antifa, my secret hope is that in a move of solidarity, quote, the Democratic Party decides to declare or more and more Democratic Party members decide to declare themselves members of Antifa, legally execute them on grounds of treason.
Oh, there you go. No, but what's going to happen is that we're going to be about to execute
the left wing of the American political system in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
Yay, fascism for libertarian fascism at its best.
That's what we got to do. I mean, but right when we're about to execute them, they're all going to come out as gay men, and then we can't touch them. So that'll be it.
Oh man, yeah. we can't. But seriously, I really hope at best. I know Antifa are a bunch of scumbags and probably deserve to get beaten. Like, I kind of view Antifa that they're kids that never got beaten in their childhoods.
Oh jeez. Oh man, Antifa. I mean, I really, man, like I
honestly think that they really should get a beating because they haven't got any beating. I know Stefan Molyneux would say, or the raise libertarians but not hit their child. I have to disagree right there. I think a good beating as a child will definitely make them more of a libertarian.
Libertarian fascism. Let's do it.
Teach
your kids how to drive, fly helicopters, and you'll be.
Yeah, man. But seriously, they're probably not gonna riot, and there's probably not a lot of people that are gonna come anyway.
Well, who knows? Who knows?
Like, let's see, Antifa.
I mean, I don't.
If there is riots, it will be the media cannot lie about it. The media have to fully expose the extreme left and call them out on it.
What are you expecting from the riots on the 4th?
I don't. Who knows? I mean, it's either going to be awful, or here's the thing: is that it's probably it'll probably happen, right? And they're gonna break shit as they usually do. But it's either going to be that the media is going to try to misrepresent it and say like something like they'll just say Trump has been so divisive that there's this and this, right? And that Antifa has been pushed too far, and then that's either just going to increase people's distrust of the media even more than it already has. Or, Antifa is just going to get the shit kicked out of them, and then it's just going to make their movement even more aggravated. It's like Black Lives Matter talking about police brutality when Antifa gets it.
We got two options now.
Oh no.
Let's see. We could just let them riot and let the police not do anything, but let them show what they really are: a bunch of leftist scumbags that we were born in a strong society but created weak men. And hopefully get the rise of more right wingers because of this. Or
I think I think how we deal with the riot thing will be somewhat, obviously, I'm probably thinking that there's going to be more political fallout than there might have to be. But I think it's still a careful situation, so that you don't just. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you continue? Intellectually.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was basically just saying I think we need to be careful just so, we don't increase sentiments of, police brutality and all that kind of stuff. Because, the left will just run away with that if everybody starts getting their ass beat at the, November 4th riot.
But they deserve it, though. Who cares about a bunch of leftist politicians, arrogant intellectuals that deserve to die anyway?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, but you have to think of it from the masses who are going to get these media coverage of it all, and blah 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 blah, and then they're going to say that who knows how bad it could get. But I think we need to be careful.
I mean,
like, what should we know pragmatic culture solution to this, but I think that I don't think the. Actually, I do hope the president do. I do think the president should declare Antifa as some type of terrorist group.
What was Pragmatic trying to say?
Yeah, like it's not that I want there to be any. I mean, it's not that I think they're necessarily them each as an individual is necessarily a threat, but they choose to be this massive group that goes around burning property. And there's a point at which there's this policy I keep hearing that no lives for broken windows, but it's much more than broken windows. And honestly, it's like a lot more property damage than any of their lives are worth. But
pragmatic culture, we're creating more jobs when we break windows and property. So I don't know why you're worrying about that.
Yes.
Antifa is driving the
But
capitalist system. It's like,
Don't worry, we're all Keynesians now since the 1970s.
I mean, it's just like I don't want their continual political violence shouldn't be tolerated at a point, and
oh
so
no,
I
most
don't.
definitely.
It's why I'm so sympathetic to somewhat radical solutions to it. I mean, I don't. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily like it, but if it's
Yeah.
necessary, it's necessary.
I think they definitely need to be categorized as a terrorist organization, and
Yeah,
you know,
they
then
should
proper
definitely be
steps can be
categorized.
taken then. You know, once they're categorized as such. And I think once it's exposed, so like if at the November 4th thing, it's really just very blatant and everybody can see it, and it's almost, you know, if it's a
Hmm.
consensus, you know, both sides can see that they're awful, then I think, you know, if they get beat in the street, it's not as bad, right? But if, you know, if there's still a token of the left or whatever that they're just, I mean, I can't understand how the left could even defend Antifa. I mean, it's just
Well,
like, I mean,
the left could make the Antifa as a radical right-wing organization. They can pull the right story
oh,
off in the corporate biased media.
that would be ridiculous. I don't think that could happen, but
Actually, I think
yeah.
Prager U is trying to make the alt-right more as a leftist organization right now, the right wing anyway, or the establishment right wing.
What were you trying to say, Pragmatic?
That's not. I've heard plenty of people claim that this whole Antifa revolution thing is just a false flag set up by the alt right and
Uh,
stuff. But I mean,
yeah.
garbage.
It's
I
gonna
think
turn your
people
frog. Yeah.
underplaying what's going to happen on the revolution is going to lead to more damage being done. I mean, it
Oh,
depends how much damage, but I still think,
But
it is a bad.
but at the
yeah.
end
I
of the
mean,
day, the government is going to get bigger if the Antifa riots does happen. The more increasing the militarization of the police.
yeah, it's gonna be an interesting thing for sure. I mean, because if we look at anything like even the scale of, the whole Battle of Berkeley thing and the whole Milo thing at Berkeley. I mean, if that's just what they did for just a speaker, and then they're doing this huge ass, right? I mean, they even did what was it? That global conference with Trump and Putin. Was it in Germany? I remember.
Oh, that means that's the official. That's the official story. Then that Trump actually is colluding with Putin, the Russians.
But they had a bunch of riots
Was
there.
that whatchamacallit? There was that march in Hamburg, I think it was, for like what,
Yeah,
G20 or something?
yeah, for G20, and they had a big old deal there. Um, that'd be crazy if it was of that magnitude for sure. But who knows? I mean, I'm really interested to see how if it gets spun at all, and it'd be great if it just made it consensus that that group is awful. And because I mean, because like you said, it should be intolerable that that's allowed to happen. You know,
Hmm.
obviously, I'm probably a little less. I mean, who knows? Whatever's going to be the solution, I guess. But
Oh
openly,
man,
it is
the
because it's just it's like because it's not only that they're destroying property and being violent, it's also just the suppression of speech and just values in general. I know, I think it was
Being
ABC.
general totalitarian dicks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I remember ABC was interviewing Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was speaking at like Utah State University. It was some university in Utah, and they interviewed like the leader of the group that was protesting, and the interviewer said, "Okay, so don't you think he has the right to freedom of speech?" And he said, "No, I don't think he should speak." And the interviewer said, "Well, don't you? It's his constitutional right." And then the leader of the group said, "I don't care about the Constitution." He says, "I don't think it's a relevant document right now." And it's like, holy shit, that's the
Yeah.
type of people. That's the type of people you're talking to, because they just don't, they reject it. They don't care.
Yep.
And but so now that we talk about it more, I do see, the merit in just kind of crushing it at this point. But again, I think it's it's still got to be careful, right? It's still got to be carefully towed and everything, because who knows what's going to happen.
any thoughts on the Manhattan terrorist attack the other day?
I mean, it's another terrorist attack. It's not
Yeah.
like there's all that much that could have been done about it. You wish it had never happened, but
Yeah.
I think the atheist community is becoming a little more spurgy out, saying this is another example of religious extremism. But I was just thinking to myself, this is another example of failed foreign policy.
Oh, I haven't heard much of their reaction from it, but you know, it's
No,
something that's crap.
just no. It's just they just using it as ammunition, if anything else, against the religious people.
Mm.
True enough.
I mean, I'm sure that's with any sort of jihad attack, right? Because then they say, well, Christians aren't that far off. It's like,
Like
well,
Yeah, it's
they're
kind
not blowing
of
each other
inspired
up
if
right now.
it's not kind of
ISIS related.
dishonest though,
We don't.
because they sort of just tagging at a
Yeah.
surface level of it, a surface level cost of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because honestly, guys, it's really another example of failed foreign policy. This is also another example of not properly vetting anyone.
Mm.
Yeah, well, he wasn't. What a lot of people are saying is he wasn't from any of the countries that Trump banned on his list, so there wasn't anything that would have been done anyway. But I honestly think that there should be just a flat out moratorium put on whatchamacallit, immigration in general for a while. Like I don't think that's ridiculous to do.
I don't
No.
know. There's a supply for cheap labor, and Mexicans are really gonna work for dirt cheap. So let's have some.
And I
So
think this whole demand for cheap labor is a lie. I think it's there. I think, there are other restrictions that are forcing people to seek it outside of the legal bounds, but that doesn't mean we should just flat out let them.
it can.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. It can. I don't know. What am I doing? Why am I arguing for open borders? I don't really care about open borders.
Mm.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I think there should be another time and period where I think we ought to just shut down immigration for a while, let the immigrants who are here, I don't know if they can assimilate, but let's at least try for a couple decades and then open it back up, but to a much more limited extent. Because honestly,
What about we could use the Ronald Reagan solution and grant them amnesty?
no.
I
But
actually, honestly, I think that's a good idea. Just then this could be like
no,
our
when Ronald
final.
Reagan granted all those immigrants amnesty, California became a blue state. We're not doing that. That is a bad idea.
Okay, maybe not. Okay, like
Honestly, though,
we can't just deport them all.
Well, I mean, we're not going to be able to
we can
find them
damn
all.
well
That's the
try.
thing.
But we're not gonna definitely build a border wall.
I mean, I don't even know if it's worth it tracking all of them down and deporting them. I mean, it's probably just worth it just shutting down, the immigration for a while, or at least make it very strict, right?
I don't know. I still
I
believe
think you
that
can.
amnesty is a solution.
What were you saying, Pragmatic?
Nah. I mean, what I would say to that is that it's not just the economic gain that you have to worry about. Because if you look at things from a purely economic perspective, then maybe some immigrants in the total will benefit you, but even the economic side of it is highly questionable because it's the benefit is pretty much gone, if not negative at this point. It's more of a deficit because of how much they're using of public services
Oh
and
yeah,
welfare
most
and all
definitely.
that kind of. Besides that, it's kind of a point of culture because I mean, you know how NCAP friends like to say when people reference Somalia, and it's like, oh, Somalia is the perfect model of an anarchist society. One of their go-to phrases is that there are no ANCAPs there, so how can it be an ANCAP society?
Or a better argument is that Somali is a failed example of government intervention, and that caused chaos. So
Oh yeah, well I mean there's multiple cases to be made about Somalia, but I mean I think that's a legitimate point to say that. How can Somalia be an anarchist state when there aren't any anarchists there? And
Yeah.
I think whatchamacallit, I think that logic can properly be extended to a lot of other things. Like if we're going to be a libertarian society, we need libertarians to exist within this country. And
Oh
quite
yeah.
honestly, libertarians, are genuine libertarians, not just this garbage where it's like, oh, fiscally conservative, socially liberal garbage. Like actual libertarians are in short supply. And so I think by just allowing all these immigrants in, these immigrants who have proven to vote socialist and vote left wing as they come into this country, we're not doing anything to promote that culture that will reasonably sustain a libertarian society in the near future. And so I think we need to come at the immigration thing from, more than just the economic side of it. You need to come at it from the cultural side as well.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I totally agree.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
esoteric
I've heard about
entity
that before.
kind of disagrees with me on there.
Yeah, I do remember having a conversation with some of my buddies about all that, where I was talking like, I was talking about just the immigration and how, it would be virtually impossible at that point to make any sort of change with the size of government or any sort of structural change if you just keep importing people. They're just going to keep voting to keep it in place. And it's,
Hmm.
and maybe it is a worthwhile solution, solution, quote unquote solution, right? But, a step towards, restructuring things, or not even just restructuring things, just, allowing a movement to flourish, right?
Or we can just take all the money from the welfare and Social Security and give them to the leftists so they can leave the country.
Let them.
Man, that'd be nice.
Jeez. I mean, if anything, you just make, steeper restrictions on immigration to where they have to have skills, right? So it's not just unskilled
Yep.
labor. But, who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe.
Hopefully, okay. Hmm. Any more topics that anyone wants you to discuss?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. What about you guys?
Like,
No, not particularly. I thought it was pretty interesting so far. So.
so do you want to continue streaming, or should we end?
We could end if you'd like.
Okay. So I hope you all enjoy this stream. I thought this was a highly productive conversation, and I hope you can shout yourselves out. Uh,
Peace.
Wait,
Yeah.
are you gonna say promote your channels or Twitter page?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Pragmatic, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel of the same name, and you can find me on Twitter too. I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and then I have a YouTube channel the same name. I don't have anything up just yet, but I think I'm gonna start documenting a little bit of like my intellectual journey. I'll just try to talk about some things I start reading, and talk about some different issues in at least my opinion. And then if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's just it's gonna be Z underscore teal and orange. And yeah,
So are you gonna be like Friedrich A. Hayek?
who knows, man? Who knows? I might